But yeah, I think this is a really good movie. I personally think that Spielberg does a great job at making you feel in the movie. Like, this cinema experience for me was such a good one. I cannot remember the last time I felt the way I felt. Hello, my name is Joseph. Welcome to the Chill Out Zone, and today we're going to be talking about Disclosure Day. And yes, there will be spoilers. This cinema experience for me was such a good one. I cannot remember the last time I felt the way I felt. I watched Disclosure Day, and honestly, I think it was such an amazing movie. I generally came out of the cinema with such a feeling of awe and wonder. But then I got home and I went on the internet and I saw all of these negative reviews regarding the movie, and honestly, I was so surprised. People were saying that Spielberg lost his touch and that his style of directing is very much outdated. And for me, I just didn't get this with this movie. This movie was such a breath of fresh air. It was something that was completely original. Yes, the premise has been seen before, the concept of aliens coming to Earth and the mystery behind their intentions, but the way it was executed in this movie was really well thought out, and it was also very complex. The general premise of this movie is that you have a character called Daniel, who is played by Josh O'Connor, and honestly, he is an emerging favorite actor of mine. I loved him in the most recent Knives Out movie, and it's so good to see him being on the big screen once again. So he was once a part of this organization which specialized in keeping classified information away from the general public, mainly being the existence of alien. However, he rebels against that company, and he has actually stolen the secret that confirms that there is extraterrestrial life here on Earth, and he wishes to disclose and reveal this information to the public. Now, you also have Margaret, played by Emily Blunt, who does an amazing job in this movie, and she is a seemingly normal weather reporter. However, crazy things start happening to her. During this movie, we actually find out that Daniel and Margaret actually share a past, and they were both abducted by aliens when they were younger. And so throughout this movie, they are completely strangers. However, they are almost drawn together by the circumstances that they find themselves in. And then you have Noah, the head of the organization, and he believes that the human race is not ready to learn of the existence of alien. He believes that humans are so used to them being the supreme beings of their world that the fact that there was another higher being in their reality will cause the whole of the human race to go into chaos. And so he is the protagonist of this movie, and he tries everything to stop Daniel from releasing the information about aliens. And once again, he does an amazing job with his acting. Now, what I love about this movie is that the writing is so compelling. Throughout this movie, I was literally watching this with my mouth wide open. I was so interested. This film effortlessly grips you in. Honestly, I was glued to the screen, which was very interesting because not a lot of stuff actually happened. Like this, I guess you could say it's a thriller, but there's not a lot of action, there's not a lot of crazy things, but it drip feeds you with such interesting things, with such mystery and such a lore that it keeps you hooked. One of the ways this movie stands out with a lot of the other alien movies is that it tackles a variety of different concepts. For example, you have a character called Jane, and she used to be a nun. And so through her character, we get this very interesting concept of, does the existence of alien counteract faith? Does it mean that there is no God? Does it mean that there is no higher power? This film does explore that concept, and it does it in a very mature and complex way. However, one thing that I will say is that it doesn't quite give it the payoff that we were all wanting. It wasn't really satisfying. I feel like the writers bring up this concept and then they just leave it hanging towards the end of the movie. I just don't think they did a good job at paying it off. And this is one of my main problems with this movie. It does a great job at starting to explore all of these concepts. And not only that, but it also takes us to such an interesting climax. However, it just wasn't able to pay it off. And I feel like, contrary to a lot of what I've heard on the internet, I believe that this movie should have actually been at least 5 to 10 minutes longer. Like, where this movie ends was on such a cliffhanger, it wasn't even satisfying at all. One of the main plot points of this movie is why the aliens are here on Earth, and not only that, but also, will the human race be able to handle Disclosure Day? Will they be able to handle the existence of a higher power, an alien race on their planet? But this movie just stopped short of us finding out the answer to that. It does a great job of exploring the possibility of the human race maybe being able to handle it, or maybe them not being able to handle it, but it just stops so abruptly, and honestly it's very disheartening, and I feel like it's very dissatisfying. With that being said, I don't actually think it takes away from the movie in its entirety. Again, this movie isn't perfect, but I still feel like even with everything that they give us, this movie is still really good. Spielberg does an amazing job. The writer of this movie does an amazing job. The actors, I think, were great. Again, Josh O'Connor, Emily Blunt, I mean, like all of the characters, the protagonist, Hugo, I think everyone does an amazing job when it comes to the acting. The cast was amazing. Not only that, but the writing and the plot was also so interesting and very layered. You can tell how elegant this movie was because it didn't have to rely on cheesy and rubbish humor. It didn't have to rely on action scenes. Like, for me, the most important and interesting part was us finding out what was going on throughout the movie. It was them raising questions and also them answering it as well. Like, it was just very interesting because it built up the idea of the human race potentially being able to handle the truth of aliens or not. Like, it did an amazing job of it, but it just didn't really pay off. For me, the favorite part of this movie was when they actually reveal the existence of the aliens. We see their initial response to the alien. We see how the world stops. I also love how they actually reveal the information through the news, and I love the people's reaction to the dark truth of what the company and what the government have been doing with these aliens. Like, once again, there was no epic battle. It wasn't scary, it wasn't funny. It was just so interesting to see the response of all of these people. I would have loved to see how that would have had an effect on the general population of the earth, but again, this movie stopped short. Not only that, but I would also say that through the main antagonist, Noah, again, he had such a drive to make sure that the protagonist of this movie didn't disclose the information. But then towards the ending, he simply just gives up. And I think that was also a bit weird. Like, I don't understand why he will be so desperate, so adamant in stopping the existence coming out. But then when it's all about to happen, he simply just stops, takes a chair and sits down. I just don't understand why he would do that. So again, it's clear to see that this movie had a problem with ending character arcs, or it had a problem with it following through. But yeah, I think this is a really good movie. I personally think that Spielberg does a great job at making you feel in the movie. Like, this cinema experience for me was such a good one. I cannot remember the last time I felt the way I felt. Like, I think it was just amazing. Honestly, it was such a breath of fresh air. It wasn't some old IP that was being rinsed. It wasn't a beloved franchise being milked. Like, it was something completely original. I think it's a shame that this movie is predicted not to do so well. I think it's a shame that people are not really liking this movie, because I think this is exactly what cinema needs right now. It is something completely new, something completely fresh. I would definitely recommend and wish that a lot of people would give this movie a chance. I would also say that the marketing wasn't the best at all. Like, I can't even remember how I found this movie, but I didn't really see it everywhere. I think it was because of my love of movies that I somehow was able to come across the trailer, but I didn't really see it out in the street anywhere. So I think they did a bad job with the marketing. But yeah, honestly, I think this movie is really good. If you have watched it, let me know what you think of it in the comments. I would probably give this movie a 7, maybe a 7.5. But yeah, let me know what you think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Peace out.